Picture yourself sliding into a red velvet seat at Grauman's Chinese theater in late 1945. Rita Hayworth materializes in liquid satin, hair blazing like a copper torch. A tambourine snaps. Her hips flick. Hope acquires a soundtrack. Minutes later, Chaney's phantom claws cathedral pillars. Clark Gable's grin detonates like summer fireworks, and Bela Lugosi's eyes pin you to the back of your creaking seat. Freeze that frame. Tilt the reel until the gloss drains away and the negative curls under inspection. Beneath Rita's perfect hairline, raw flesh still weeps from weekly burns. Behind Gable's legendary smile, infected gums throb around ill-fitting plates. Lugosi's regal glide is simply a man inching forward on painkillers because a shattered spine crackles with every step. And Chaney? He is bleeding beneath the mask. Sweat and blood-soaking cotton wadding no audience will ever smell. Tonight we strip away the gauze from 8 legends whose bodies became battlegrounds for box office glory. Then we widen the lens to the system that forged their torment and ask what price we demand from performers today. Rita Hayworth, the face they re-engineered. Rita was born Margarita Carmen Cancino, daughter of 2 Spanish flamenco dancers who hoofed through Tijuana bars before landing in California nightclubs. She could out-tap any drummer, but Columbia executives saw too much ethnicity for Midwestern ticket buyers. Their remedy? Burn away the pain. For 16 straight months, the studio's chief stylist strapped 19-year-old Rita to a dented dental chair, stretched a rubber cap across her scalp, and fired electric needles along her low hairline, quarter inch by quarter inch, until a full inch of heritage lay on the salon floor. Sessions happened Thursday nights so the weekend could scab, crust, peel, and half heal before Monday still photo shoots. She often fainted, revived by ammonia and the iron smell of singed hair. A studio medic earned $5 an hour for silence. A wardrobe apprentice kept vinegar at hand to blot bloodstains from white blouses. The makeover continued below the neck. Rita's left leg measured an inch shorter than her right. Cork lifts hidden inside satin pumps compensated for the tilt, but bruised arches and shredded knees. Watch Gilda in slow motion and her ankle buckles for a heartbeat, a micro grimace flitting across sunlight. Offset, Rita developed a nightly ritual she called the ice mask. She would soak a hotel towel in a basin of chipped ice, press it against her fiery scalp until the towel thawed, then swap it for another. 6 cycles, every evening, to shrink the blisters and deaden the ache before dawn call time. Only after the swelling eased did she rehearse her routines in stockinged feet, sliding across polished floors to minimize impact on her mismatched legs. The quiet swish-swish of silk on hardwood became her metronome, a lonely sound in rented bungalows that smelled of witch hazel and scorched hair. That discipline, treat, rehearse, collapse, repeated for years, binding her to an image the public adored yet never truly saw. Letters auctioned in 2023 record the toll. I sleep on scabs and dance on blisters. I dare not complain. They would simply raise the music. Publicists drilled her to deny Spanish blood. When European columnists asked about flamenco rhythms pulsing in her dance numbers, the interview was yanked, the reporter escorted offlot, and Rita fined $50 for unauthorized disclosure. Shame outlived memory. Decades later, Alzheimer's eroded names and dates, yet she never forgot the executive who called her birth face box office poison. Lon Chaney Cesar, pain as performance. They dubbed him the man of 1,000 faces, but each face devoured a slice of flesh. On the Phantom of the Opera set in 1925, Chaney flattened his nose with cotton, collodion glue, and 2 wires threaded into his nostrils, yanked over his skull, anchored beneath a felt cap. Under blistering arc lamps, the wires heated, skin swelled, and blood seeped through pancake makeup. 2 years earlier, becoming Quasimodo, he lashed a 70-pound brace of wood, iron, and lead shot across his torso. Breathing shrank to razor slits. Assistant director Eddie Kahn timed each take. 10 seconds safe, 12, and Chaney's lips blued. 14, and they ripped off the harness while he vomited into a bucket that filled with bile denser than house paint. Chaney kept a wooden cigar box labeled odds and ends in his dressing room. Inside lay shards of broken dentures, scraps of stiffened gauze, and twisted bits of wire snipped from his own prosthetics. Between takes, he would finger each relic like a rosary, measuring whether fresh pain matched yesterday's benchmark. Crew members noticed that on days when the new device hurt less, he quietly added a heavier piece of lead to the Quasimodo harness, chasing a level of suffering he believed the audience could somehow feel through the screen. To him, realism wasn't a goal, it was a moral debt he paid in sweat and bruises. Universal insured him for $500,000, on condition he never altered his proprietary makeup methods. Translation: keep torturing yourself, or breach contract. Years of self-inflicted damage shredded his immune system. Pneumonia slipped through torn chest walls and claimed him at 47. According to crew lore, his final words were, "I created monsters. Now they've created me." Merle Oberon, light that hid a wound. London, 1937. Fog slicked a country road. Merle Oberon's limousine clipped a stone wall. The crash shattered her cheekbone, slashed skin, and paralyzed half her smile. Surgeons predicted retirement, but cinematographer Lucien Ballard, lover, later husband, refused defeat. He bolted a lamp above the lens, so a halo of soft light erased scars. Hollywood named the invention the OBIE, after the woman whose damage it concealed. Her second secret cut deeper. Born in Bombay to an Anglo-Indian mother, Oberon faced racism armed with jars of bleaching paste. Makeup artists blended talc with mercury-based whiteners, caking her skin until blisters bubbled beneath scorching cleagues. Between takes, a dresser pressed iced cloths beneath her jaw. In the late 1940s, Oberon began financing small scholarships for Anglo-Indian girls in Bombay, anonymous gifts delivered through a British charity, so her biracial identity remained hidden. She asked only for annual letters describing their studies. The envelopes arrived addressed to Miss O.B. Light, a private nod to the invention that let her stay on screen. Alone in Hollywood, she read the looping scripts aloud, practicing facial exercises prescribed by her surgeon to keep slack muscles responsive. Each success story trembling in her hands reminded her of a life she publicly denied, yet secretly nurtured, a quiet rebellion conducted in the currency of opportunity. A diary entry unsealed in 2024 sings with pain. "Left side of my face is numb, the right side of my soul is number." During Wuthering Heights, director William Wyler demanded brighter light. Oberon collapsed, sobbing that intense beams would expose both scar and skin tone. Production shut for 3 days. Press blamed exhaustion. Clark Gable, the smile that stung. Clark Gable's grin melted butter, or so fan magazines swooned, but no columnist recorded the stench. By 32, rampant periodontal disease required extraction of nearly every tooth. Dentures replaced them, yet never fit, carving ulcers and brewing infections that radiated a furnace of halitosis. Co-star Vivian Lee tucked lemon slices into her nostrils before each retin-scarlet kiss. Sound mixers fought whistle tones as dentures clicked on sibilants, stuffing cotton behind microphones and layering violins over troublesome consonants. When audio still betrayed the secret, editors pioneered close-up switching. Long shots on Gable, tight romantic frames on a body double-filmed over the shoulder. Audiences swooned. Gable tasted blood behind the smile. Gable's contract included an odd clause granting him a private on-lot pantry stocked with cinnamon sticks, mint sprigs, and eucalyptus lozenges, aromatics he chewed obsessively between scenes to mask infection odor. At home, he installed a laboratory-grade autoclave in the master bathroom to sterilize his dentures twice daily, a humming steel canister that unnerved house guests when it released medicinal steam. Even so, he lived in dread of candid photographs. Studio escorts often positioned him half-profile at banquets, so any sudden grimace or loosened plate would remain out of flashbulb range. The King's Court, it turned out, was choreographed down to the angle of his jaw. Offset, he covered his mouth when laughing, avoided restaurants, and once vomited a dental crown during live radio, rinsed it in bourbon, replaced it, and finished the show. Studios weighed new prostheses against gossip fallout and chose silence. Golden smiles are cheap to market. Empathy costs more than studio coffers cared to spare. Bela Lugosi, the drugstore Dracula. Audiences met an elegant immortal. Behind the cape lived a wounded infantryman. Shrapnel from World War I carved Lugosi's sciatic nerve, leaving partial paralysis. Every glide across Castle Dracula's set was a calculated weight shift to avoid collapse. Morphine dulled the agony. Dependency followed, financed by studio medical advances. He was also legally blind, without thick glasses. That hypnotic stare emerged from squinting so hard his eyes watered beneath sizzling lamps. He routinely walked into props he couldn't see. Universal blamed method intensity. Misjudging a staircase, he tumbled into a grip's toolbox. Executives fired the grip, moved the stairs, ignored Lugosi's vision. During his lean post-Universal years, Lugosi earned cash performing dramatic readings in dim hotel lounges where low light hid his uncorrected vision. Stage managers taped thick white stripes on the floor so he could find center spot by shuffling his feet until suede touched paint. Between monologues, he excused himself to the wings, not for applause but for a heating pad he wedged against his spine, counting slowly to 40 before morphine tablets dulled the fire enough to continue. Patrons paid 50 cents for gothic thrills, unaware the real drama unfolded in the shadows, a once-famed vampire negotiating truce with his own nerves. By 1955, he was bankrupt and desperate. He checked himself into Los Angeles rehab, one of Hollywood's first public admissions of addiction. Cameras captured him exiting, skeletal yet hopeful. A reporter asked whether the count would rise again. Lugosi smiled. Even vampires tire of the night. Sobriety restored clarity but not roles. Pain endured. Harold Lloyd. 3 fingers on a clock. Harold Lloyd's bespectacled daredevil seemed indestructible, yet a 1919 publicity stunt cost him thumb and index finger. A prop bomb meant to smoke exploded, shredding his hand and grazing an eye. Surgeons saved vision, not digits. Lloyd ordered a flesh-colored glove with aluminum bones. It pinched nerves, stifled skin, and cut circulation. 2 years later, he dangled from a department store clock for safety last. The prosthetic robbed half his grip. Rope burned through cloth, split remaining fingers to bone. Stitches went in overnight. He repeated the peril next morning because cloud cover matched. Insurance refused coverage. He tracked wind and barometric pressure himself, joking to crew that death wouldn't look good in the trades. Lloyd became fascinated with engineering after the accident, sketching pulley systems that could bear his weight should grip strength fail mid-stunt. One prototype, essentially a concealed wrist lanyard looped through the set's superstructure, was rejected by insurers for looking too obvious on camera. Undeterred, he funded a machinist to refine the idea, eventually patenting a retractable safety reel adopted decades later by IMAX crews working at height. Though audiences saw only daring comedy, a quiet web of cables often threaded just outside the frame, proof that Lloyd's greatest trick was turning personal limitation into an industry-wide safeguard. Every stunt silenced executives who labeled him damaged goods. In talkies, he squeezed a rubber ball between takes to pump blood through numb fingers. Katharine Hepburn, turning tremor into trademark. Confidence was Hepburn's birthright, rowing cruise shells at Bryn Mawr, leaping Connecticut cliffs, until teacups began rattling in her hands. Essential tremor is relentless. Studios called it nerves, threatened suspension if she couldn't control herself. Hepburn devised camouflage. She raced dialogue so quickly the quaver found no foothold, wrapped necks in stiff collars, demanded skirt pockets deep enough to anchor restless thumbs. Costumers worried about mannish silhouettes. She barked, "Talent wears what it damn well pleases." Prop masters swapped glass for pewter, so liquid weight steadied her wrist. Directors choreographed constant motion to blur involuntary shakes into purposeful energy. Critics praised her brisk vitality, unaware the locomotion was self-defense. On location for African Queen, Hepburn mapped each day around the tremor's rhythm. Strong at dawn, ragged by noon, near uncontrollable after sunset. She insisted the most delicate teacup props appear in morning scenes and wrote margin notes reminding herself to keep elbows bent. Locking joints reduced visible shake. Even food became strategy. Protein smoothies sipped through metal straws to avoid telling teaspoons. Crew gossip claimed her energy came from limitless drive, but a cameraman later recalled seeing her collapse into a director's chair the moment "cut" echoed, hands fluttering like wet leaves until the next setup demanded stillness. In letters to Spencer Tracy, she joked, "I flap faster than a hummingbird so nobody notices the wings." Decades later, she flaunted the tremor on talk shows, becoming the disorder's unofficial ambassador. But in her prime, she fought a silent war, mid-frame. Lionel Barrymore. The wheelchair, breakthrough. Arthritis gnawed Lionel Barrymore's hips. Fractures splintered bone. Studios hid decline with steel braces laced under wool trousers. 18 pounds of agony. Stand-in Cliff Edwards recalled unscrewing braces, mopping blood, reharnessing flesh. When pain toppled him, MGM either lost a star or rolled him on camera. They rewrote Young Doctor. Kildare parked Barrymore in a chair, then slashed his salary by 30% for reduced mobility. Audiences loved cranky Dr. Gillespie. Frank Capra cast him as miserly Mr. Potter in It's a Wonderful Life, cementing a harmful trope. Visible disability equaling villainy. Barrymore loathed the narrative, yet needed paychecks. Offset, he lobbied SAG for sick leave clauses, seeds of today's accessibility standards. Studio memos bragged that wheelchairs photograph cheaper than extras who wander. Progress arrived, but always packaged for profit. In his final decade, Barrymore transformed his dressing room into a mobile command post. Blueprints of each set papered the walls, annotated with camera angles he could navigate without standing. He affixed velvet loops to furniture so he could pivot chairs with one hand, rehearsed dialogue in a low register that carried without forcing breath through damaged ribs, and timed pain injections to peak during climactic scenes. Younger actors marveled that he never missed a cue. They didn't see the ledger on his lap where every movement, sip of water, and dose of morphine was scheduled to the minute. A master class in conquering space from a seated throne. During the studio era, every major lot ran an unofficial correction department. Ostensibly, they arranged dental work. In practice, they operated as clandestine surgical salons. MGM's correction chief, a former Army medic, kept 3 examining rooms hidden behind a wardrobe warehouse. Under buzzing fluorescence, actors endured unregulated rhinoplasties, jaw wiring, and cortisone injections to bleach birthmarks. Payroll ledgers labeled the charges costume maintenance. Quarterly, performers stripped to cotton gowns for top-to-toe inspections. Fingernails too bitten, prescribe gelatin capsules, ears protruding, schedule cartilage pinning, freckles, recommend acid peels. Suspension without pay dangled over anyone who refused. Future Oscar winners queued beside day players. Everyone scored like livestock. Why comply? Survival. Studios owned contracts, theaters, and press. Defiance risked blacklisting. Insurance firms denied coverage for known disabilities. Disclosure invited financial freefall. Publicists weaponized rumors. One casting memo warned, "Note, slight lisp, retain as leverage during renegotiation." Personal pain became corporate bargaining chip. Fans weren't oblivious. Gossip columns fed blind items. The matinee idol whose breath wilts roses. The beauty whose mirror hates her. Readers pieced clues together, elevating fascination. The widening gap between on-screen deity and rumored wreck sold tickets, a dynamic still exploited by modern clickbait. Consider Judy Garland skipping a painted yellow brick road in size 5 ruby shoes. Those slippers hid steel inserts compensating for a leg-length discrepancy that threatened her gait. MGM cobblers built mismatched heels, lining them with lamb's wool. Garland, 17, never publicly mentioned the pain. Studio health logs show vitamin boosts, spiked with amphetamines to keep her singing 16-hour days. The regimen later fueled exhaustion and an early grave. The slippers now rest in the Smithsonian, the steel inserts still screwed in place, a glittering reliquary for deception. 8 legends, 1 pattern. Glamour that ignited courtships rested on scalp burns, nose wires, chemical rashes, spasming nerves, shattered bones, and contracts that prized illusion over flesh. Digital restoration now lets you count Rita's eyelashes, scrub Chaney's blemishes, smooth Hepburn's tremor, but ignorance persists in ultra-high resolution. The 2025 UCLA Diversity Report notes, actors with disclosed disabilities occupy fewer than 8% of major roles, far below real-world prevalence. So, when Rita flips that molten hair, hear the crackle of singed follicles. When Chaney tears off his mask, picture the wires carving cartilage. Let Gable's grin remind you charisma can taste of blood. Lugosi's glide cue the nausea of withdrawal. Watch Hepburn jab Cary Grant's chest knowing she outruns her own neurons. Applaud Lloyd hanging from the clock, but remember he couldn't feel 2 fingers gripping time. And when Mr. Potter wheels into Bedford Falls, hear Barrymore mutter that equality still bills by the hour. Keep watching the classics with X-ray eyes, compassionate hearts, and voices ready to shout, "Cut!" when old shadows creep back. Somewhere a young actor practices a grin in a mirror while hiding a limp from casting directors. We owe that kid better than a second-hand dentist chair and a rolled-up towel. The show can go on, without butcher blocks, without silence, without charging pain as the price of perfection.